you are into movies and movie discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am the Wiz, and I am with my friend today.
Zero.
How you doing this week?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
Got a federal holiday that I'm just kind of relaxing, so...
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I love federal holidays, especially when I used to work. It was always fun to say, haha, you have to give me a day off, bastards. And then, Anyway, so we are here to review the 1999 sci-fi classic The Matrix, starring Keanu Reeves, Laurence Fishburne, Carrie Moss, and Hugo Weaving, directed by the Wachowskis. We talked a little bit of when we first saw the movie. You saw it, I think, after it came out, probably in like 2001-ish, 2002, correct?
Yeah, 2001, 2002-ish,
Okay.
when it was on DVD.
And I saw it in the theaters. Let's talk a little about before The Matrix and exactly how sci-fi was being made around the time. And sci-fi before The Matrix was pretty grounded, with a few exceptions. Most sci-fi took like a more Blade Runner-esque type of mentality of we need to ground it in some reality without, in order to make the sci-fi and then make everything else fantastical in this. And that is the thing with The Matrix that I think made a stark change. It was a lot of use of CGI, a lot of use of different types of techniques with stunts. And The Matrix, whether either of us liked it or not, can really say that it actually revolutionized the industry when it came to sci-fi films, because it allowed a wider breadth of creativity in other avenues. What do you remember from sci-fi movies from back before The Matrix was a thing?
A lot of the special effects work was either very minimal, or if it was overdone, it would just look very, very cheesy. And typically just, I remember just in high school just hearing like, hey, did you see the sci-fi flick? No, just everyone saying that the special effect work looks so corny in it. It just looks like it's so tacked on, and you can tell when it begins and when it ends, and just, it's so terrible.
So I remember watching Independence Day when it came out in the theaters, and I remember people loving that movie. Mainly, I think, more because of Will Smith and how good he was in it than anything else. But the special effects at that time were pretty revolutionary, with the way the alien spaceships looked and the way that the blowing up the White House looked in that movie. And a lot of people gravitated and really liked that. But after The Matrix, I barely hear anybody speaking about Independence Day. I know there's still people who are fans of it, but it just took 5 years for them to say, like, oh, well, that's nothing now. We have The Matrix. So it's like, oh, wow, okay. Because, like, I don't hear anybody talking about, like, Independence Day, but they definitely still talk about The Matrix. And The Matrix is also interesting because not only do they talk about it in the film sense and how it changed films, also is in the zeitgeist in general. When you talk about misinformation, or you talk about something that feels odd and feels wrong, a lot of people mention The Matrix. Oh, it's like we're living in The Matrix or something. So it really became a cultural phenomenon that few movies really get to be in this. And it's interesting watching this now about, what is it, almost 25 years later? It's fascinating to experience this. What kind of feelings did you dredge up after watching this recently?
To me, I think the one thing that still sticks out is just the fight choreography is still excellent to this day. Just, but that's mainly to Yuen Woo-ping. Just, he's a master at crafting just fantastic fight choreography, and that's really the thing that just kind of always sticks to me. I'm just like, best example is the dojo fight scene. Just,
yes,
still so excellent even to this day.
Yes, absolutely. And when they do the more fantastical elements, for example, when Neo is floating on air doing his kicks, it still feels very authentic, and it still feels, in a lack of a better word, real. It really feels like it's very fluid, and it feels like it actually could happen. Whereas in some scenes in the movie, I'm using, for example, in the beginning where Trinity is flying through the air and she's twisting her body to fit into a window and break through it. That little twisting sequence, it looks pretty bad right now, but that's like few and far between when it comes to the special effects. Okay, so we're talking about choreography. I agree with the choreography. I think the fight sequences and a lot of the shooting sequences are really well done in this. And I think it is what adds to the film feeling, I don't think timeless is the right word, but it's stylized enough where it still feels fresh and exciting. Like I said, with the exception of like a couple of scenes, I did not come away with it going, man, this looks fake. Like, except for like a scene or two, but that's it. But I think that's what makes this movie incredibly engaging even now, because they have the right mix of special effects and practical effects that makes the world more believable and lived in. And the other thing I think that they do in this movie as well is that they go into a lot of detail, but they go into the right details. A lot of movies that try to build a world try to either over-explain, and then it starts to poke holes, and then, well, that doesn't make much sense. Or they under-explain, and it's like, well, what the hell is this? But they did the right amount in this. With what they showed in the movie, that the world itself just feels engaging enough to really want to be in it. But there's enough lack of detail for you to question certain things, but get more engaged and excited by the setting of the movie.
Yeah, it's absolutely colossal as far as the amount of world building that they do in this. Just so many details, like just how the world came to be this way, how it's like just a dystopian hellscape taken over by machines and all that sort of thing. Just they go into so much world building, but at the same time, it isn't, for lack of a better analogy, it isn't like playing one of the Trails of the Sky games, which for anyone who's a gamer listening to this, you probably know what I mean. The Trails of the Sky games, they elaborate on every single minor detail. Just even random townspeople have like bits and pieces of lore that build out the world, but they scale it back just enough to make it so that, just they're not overfeeding you the details on the world building. It's just enough to give you a sense of the world and still leave a little bit of mystery to some of the secrets of the world as well too.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about The Matrix is that The Matrix takes a long amount of time to set everything up. I would say like the first hour almost is setup. It's purely setup. Like, well, there's the first 15 minutes of the movie where you have Neo, or Mr. Anderson, I forgot his first name, but you have him basically finding out what this place is. And then once he's in, they spend a long time setting all of that up. And usually that gets bogged into details that are inane and not necessary. But in this movie, it remains engaging, entertaining, and interesting as you go forward. Even after watching this this is like the fifth time I've watched this movie, from the time I saw it in the theaters to like many other times in the past, I'm still like engaged and interested in what is being talked about. And even though I know the details that are in the movie, it's still fascinating to watch it because they treat the world with, I guess not a reverence, but they give enough detail to give you something to latch on to. But then, like you said, they they take away some details, so you'll become more interested and curious about it, which is a really hard thing to do, especially in sci-fi, because in sci-fi, it takes one fantastical element to break the illusion, to be like, yeah, that's a little contrived. But the world building and the ideas that are set forth in the movie are expertly executed in this, and I mean really well done. Like it kind of surprised me watching this again and realizing that what the Wachowskis did in this movie when it came to building the world was expertly done. Like I was looking for holes throughout the entire movie, because there were parts of this movie I was like, that's not great. But when it came to like the world and fleshing everything out, when it came to the Matrix and where they live and what the fake world is, it is engrossing, and I was floored by that, really.
And speaking of the world, the cinematography in the movie is just absolutely brilliant. Just you've got some of the moody scenes. You've got when Thomas Anderson goes to work over at the mega corporation he works at called Metacortex. It's got like this like boring tone to it to kind of represent the monotony of his day job. The cinematography in general is just fantastic to me, and yeah, I know it's a bit of an old film, but just I think it's really all about how the scenes are framed, and I think just to that respect, it's still excellent.
I think the cinematography is good, especially in the fight scenes. The less action-oriented scenes, I would say, is okay. It's not bad. It's just not as dynamic as the fight scenes and the action sequences. The cinematography does real well when it comes to lighting, I think, especially when you're in the ship. I forget the name of the ship. It's like the Nebuchadnezzar, or I forgot. But when you get into like the dark aspects of what the real world looks like, I think the way that is lit is very well done. I kind of wanted to have more of the fake world be a little more dynamic, especially when it's realized that it's all fake. I would like to have a little distortion, a little bit of color treatment in certain areas. Really, like, engage yourself into Neo's perspective when it came to the fake world. I think that would have helped in that aspect to envelope yourself more into that world itself. But that's a minor quibble, I think. I have other quibbles that I have with the movie that we'll get to, but I agree. I think the cinematography is pretty good in this.
With your mention about some of the special effects stuff and how just everyone seems to have a reverence for the Matrix, a lot of the CGI special effect work that was in this movie definitely paved the way for like future movies. And of course, I think the one big one that everyone remembers is bullet time. Just seeing these bullets just sort of suspended in the air with the trail of air being disrupted by bullets going at supersonic speeds and stuff like that. And just that's the one thing that everyone just seems to still remember to this day. And I think the Matrix is, as much as people may hate hearing this, but I think it sort of paved the way for just their special effects in movies, and really had caused the film industry to sort of really take a hard look at good special effect work, and that it can indeed be good as long as you've got just the appropriately strong technology to power it. Because I think some of the 3D workstations that they used for some of these scenes were extremely expensive computers, like I think to the tune of like probably 20 or 30 grand a piece or something like that. Just really expensive hardware.
Yeah, you wouldn't have the MCU without the Matrix. You wouldn't have a lot of different sci-fi or action films the way they are now without the Matrix. I want to point out, though, not a lot of people, but a number of people have gone back to the Matrix and have complained about how bad the special effects are. And I want to say, first off, it does look fairly dated in certain aspects. I already mentioned the Trinity jumping scene. However, I want to defend the special effects specifically in a few key areas, okay? First off, the film feels like it's in a period of time. They mention it's 1999 in the film, where really it's about 2199. I guess it's a dated reference to a specific time. I like the fact that the special effects and the things date itself, but when it comes to like bullet time, because a lot of people do end up complaining about, well, the bullet time thing where you see the little circles going back, it looks kind of cheesy, kind of fake, and all that. But I think that adds to the style of the film. If you don't like that, that's fine. But the specific special effects where it's obviously computer generated, I think actually adds to the mystique of the film, because it is essentially, the Matrix is a big computer program. So even though it looks fake, I think it's its intended purpose to look fake to a certain extent. And I know it might have taken a long time for people to come around on that. It's definitely taken my time with me on that. I think that there's an added charm to the way the special effects look. Whereas, I guess in other films, it might look cheesy and dated. It actually adds something a little bit more, which I think is unique to the Matrix, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let me go through some complaints that I have real quick. We've talked about the special effects, the world building, and everything. I want to talk about the main actors in the movie, let's talk about the first main actor, which is Keanu Reeves. Either he hasn't have much of a character, which I think that is the case of Thomas Anderson in Neo. He's not much of a character at all. Or Keanu Reeves is pretty bland in this movie. He just doesn't really say or do much when it comes to like emotions or anything. For example, when he talks to the Oracle and after what's found out during that scene, you would think there would be a lot more of a performance there, like conflicting performances or something to show like, oh no, with what happened at the Oracle. But it just seems like he showed next to nothing. Again, I understand that Neo is the cipher to which the audience is implanting itself to be in the Matrix, in the world of the Matrix. But they also tried to make him into a character that really isn't that deep or that engaging. When it came to Neo, it didn't feel neither here or there about him, but it was so kind of disappointing to watch him as a character move forward, and it just doesn't seem there's much dynamicism in either how the character is constructed or how Keanu Reeves plays him.
And that's definitely a fair thought too, especially since I think the complaint that I remember hearing a lot when the movie had came out was that Keanu Reeves was very, very stiff and very, very wooden in this role.
Yeah.
And it's an absolutely fair complaint to have.
And so is Carrie-Anne Moss. A lot of people praise Carrie-Anne Moss in this movie. They think she's great in this, and I don't understand why. She's a good actress. She's good in Memento. She was actually really good in that. But in this, and this might be the way the character is written, she is very wooden and very emotionless in this movie, and that might be the character. But when they evolve into the love story in this movie, which is either done really badly or it's made to be darker than it is, but the film treats it as something nice and sweet, which I find really strange. But the way the performance that Carrie-Anne Moss has, it's hard to tell which is which. I think the point of the romance between Trinity and Neo is to show basically captive thinking is. She says in the movie the reason why she's falling in love with him is because she was told by the Oracle she was going to fall in love with him. Whoever the one was, that is your man. I think it's supposed to be a play on people who get so invested in their religion or philosophy that it overtakes their life and their thought process. But the way that the film actually portrays it, they portray it as something sweet and something like something that is a good thing, where it really is not a good thing at all.
Especially since Trinity sort of dances around the topic and gets too shy to kind of tell Neo how she feels, like for most of the movie and everything. Of course, it's one of those things, it's just like, yeah, I get it, it's supposed to feel sweet, but it just seems like all she's doing is just following through with the prophecy, and that's just all this relationship is. It's just something that conveniently ties to the prophecy, and that seems to be the main thing about this. And it's not really a cutesy, romancy sort of story. It almost seems kind of like a relationship out of convenience due to just the prophecy and everything. But
yes.
There just didn't seem to be like a sweetness to the romance, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Yeah, there is a complete lack of depth, I think, in both the performance of Carrie-Anne Moss when it comes to the romance angle, and to basically the direction that they took it. I don't know what the decision was with Trinity, but it just seems like either they cut a bunch of stuff out to really show that she is slowly falling for him, or they cut out scenes where it was starting more and more that her belief in Morpheus is manifesting into these complicated feelings for Neo. But they don't do either in this, so when it comes out that she is actually in love with him, it just comes out of nowhere. When that is pointed out, or when that is shown in the movie, it just doesn't feel really great at all. It's like, okay, that's kind of weird. But I think in like 99 when I saw it, I kind of ignored it because it really didn't mean much in the grand scheme of the film. And it further doesn't mean much as the other films go forward. But I just don't get the decision that they made. Like, I know Carrie-Anne Moss can do a good job. She has in other roles. But in this, she is so devoid of emotion that it's really hard to actually ascertain where she has fallen in love with him, where that emotion has come from, what is the catalyst of it. And it's just explained in a line where, oh, the Oracle said it so obviously I am. It's like, what? Like, it would have been more interesting if they would have add detail to that. They just don't. They just be like, oh, yeah, she's in love with him because he is Neo. I'm like, okay. Whatever, dude. Sure. I just thought that fell flat for me. Like, big time fell flat. We got to two performances we didn't like. What did you think of Hugo Weaving?
I actually quite loved his performance, mostly because he's portraying Agent Smith. The Smiths are seen as sentient programs, and the way he narrates lines for Agent Smith, they almost have like a mechanical preciseness, but it doesn't come off as robotic. So it kind of sort of matches up that whole bit that the Smiths are just literally sentient programs just sent to do what they're supposed to do and suppress free thought and whatever's. Just loved his delivery of just his lines. The best example of this is the interrogation scene where they throw Thomas Anderson into like this interrogation room, and he just starts, just opening up this file and just starts narrating all the crimes that Neo's guilty of, and just he does it with such like a mechanical precision, but at the same time he doesn't come off as like a completely brain dead robot.
Yeah, like you said, like a sentient AI, right? So he's meant to be cold and calculated, but have enough information as to what they need to do in order to get things done. If it was a robot, it would just have that one bit of programming and it would just perform that task. Yeah, it's actually a really good performance. I think this is the best performance of the film here. But he's actually really engaging and interesting in this movie. I actually really liked Hugo Weaving. I also really like Laurence Fishburne in this. He is I think the character that you're supposed to identify with to a certain extent, if there is a character to identify with in this movie. He portrays this character really well because he is a fanatic, but he has to be somebody that people will follow. So he has that right blend of fanaticism and charisma that makes you want to follow him, even though it might not be such a great idea to do so. I really like the way he portrayed Morpheus in this specifically as well, which made it incredibly disappointing when he wasn't in the Matrix Resurrections, but I don't think he could have helped that movie, to be quite fair.
Excellent. Kind of comes off with a teacher-mentor vibe, and he just kind of nails it. And not in kind of like the Western sense, but I would say almost kind of like a Kung Fu master sort of mentorship sort of portrayal that he plays out. And personally, I think it's excellent.
We have notes here, and you put that you like the supporting cast in this. They're very colorful, or do you mean like they look very colorful, or what exactly are you referring to?
I think it's more to sort of play off of your mention that both Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss are a bit wooden in their roles.
Yes. That
the other supporting characters seem to breathe life into the film, and just to kind of help color the characters in. And they just do such a great job with just sort of making sure that, you aren't going, wow, this movie is an absolute stinker. Just the two main characters are so wooden. Jesus, what a fucking shit show. Whereas, you've got Morpheus, who comes off kind of like the old Kung Fu master, sort of mentoring Neo through trying to understand his newfound powers and stuff like that. Then you've got kind of the cold, calculative nature of Agent Smith. Those are just two other characters that just set the color of things, and the other characters do their own sort of coloring of just how screwed up and how dystopian the world is.
I think the one performance I would agree that is very good in the supporting cast is Joey Pantoliano. He plays Cypher. I think that character, for such a small role that it was written very well, but also acted really well in case of Joey Pantoliano. What I didn't like in the end is the speech that he was giving to the other people while he was killing them. That's where I was like, this felt more conflicted than really just a guy going bad. I really didn't like that part where he was talking to him and saying like, oh, say goodbye to this person, yank. It's like, that's not really where you're portraying Cypher as. You're portraying him as somebody who has lived this miserable life for the past 9 years, and he's cracking, and he's trying to find a way out. I think he should have been a lot more sympathetic in the end, but still kill him, of course. But they didn't really do that. They just turned him into this, mustache-twirling villain, and it just didn't really fit. It really didn't work for me on that end.
Yeah, because, he starts off with the whole speech that he's just like, I hate knowing how the sausage is made. I want to go put myself back into the Matrix. It's going to be great. I'll be completely ignorant of this shit. Oh, hey, by the way, let me start killing off the rest of the team, even though just all I want to do is be plugged back into the Matrix. It's just like, I get it, just he sees everyone else in the team as fanatical, true believers, and it's just sort of cramping his style, but it kind of clashes with the whole bit that he made of, I just want to be plugged back in, and I just want to forget everything.
Yeah. There are a ton of... We've talked about performances. We've talked about the world, fight choreography, special effects. I think the one thing that made the Matrix phenomenon back in the late 90s, early 2000s was the themes that it was portraying in the film. There is a lot of religious and philosophical symbolism. They do highlight some things that are philosophical in nature. And at the time, because of how accessible and how entertaining the movie was, this, I think, is what really caused people to really become obsessed with this movie, because they reference and they play on a bunch of different philosophies and religions that people are familiar with. So I think that's why a lot of people got so attached to it. That being said, found that while watching this, that it really just grazes over a lot of that stuff. They're like mere mentions and a line here or there that could be construed as a certain philosophy or religion, except for like a certain character. Like, for example, Neo is Jesus, obviously, and Cypher is Judas, of course. But I watched this film expecting to have the more deep philosophical content that has been talked about to death in the past 20 years. And I was surprised to find it's just references. And that's really it in this.
It's kind of interesting because, and you've got the whole bit of Neo's journey being sort of messianic in its sort of setup and everything. And kind of like you mentioned, Cypher is supposed to be the Judas that betrays Neo and everything. And then you've got some of the more like nihilistic philosophies, especially when Morpheus is sort of giving Neo the introduction of, hey, yeah, the year is 2199 and the world is completely fucked. It's just kind of almost nihilistic in sort of the presentation of, yeah, so, just great that, your mind's been freed, but, just know that it's not all great. And pretty much human beings, yeah, we're just giant batteries for these evil, malevolent machines. And just, it's kind of nihilistic in its presentation on that. It's just like, yeah, so there you go. Your mind's been freed and you're in a completely fucked world. Hope you enjoy the ride, buddy.
But I will say with the themes in this, there is an overlying theme in the movie that's pretty simplistic, but it actually is pretty well executed. It's a quote that is mentioned during the scene with the Oracle and Neo, and that is "Know thyself." And it's interesting that it is pointed out so pointedly in that scene. And it's a lot to do with philosophy. And I think it's the one thing when it deals with philosophy that The Matrix does really well in this is you are who you believe you are, and you won't become what you think you will be until you start believing in yourself and knowing who you are and knowing your limitations. A lot of people get hung up on the question of, well, wait a minute, how is Neo doing all this stuff and supposed to be the Superman-like person if he's not Neo, if he's not the one? And the answer really is, he is the one. He just had to believe he was. And that's what the Oracle was trying to say in this roundabout sort of way. He had people around him who believed in him, knew that, but he didn't, so it didn't matter whether he was or he wasn't. If he did not believe, he was not going to realize his potential. And that theme was done really well in this movie, I think. A lot of people get that, but I think a lot of people who get hung up on, well, he's not the one, therefore, how can he save all these people, blah, 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 blah. I think they just missed that step, I think, in that end. What were your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, totally. Especially just throughout the movie, Morpheus hints at it so much. Just, hey, you need to start believing in yourself. And of course, just, for most of the movie gets hung up on, I can't do it. I don't have the powers you think I have. And of course, just then you have the Oracle mentioning, hey, there's an important philosophy you should know. You should know thyself. And then, of course, he kind of walks out of it with, the whole speech that the Oracle basically says, sorry, kid, you're not the one. Mm-hmm. And, just he's sort of like consumed by this whole thing of just going, and my God, just this freaking sucks. Morpheus has built me up as like the one who's going to save the world and all this stuff, and I'm not the one. Holy fuck. I'm gonna disappoint Morpheus. Holy shit, what the fuck do I do? Then you have like a scene where he finally starts to believe, he finally starts to do all the superhuman shit. And just at that point, just Morpheus starts to realize, oh my God, he's starting to believe. And then you get into the final fight scene where just Neo's just ambushed in the subway. And, just all the characters are like, oh God, he's got to run. He's got to get out of there. And then just when he kind of decides, fuck this, I'm going to fight. And, just at that point, that's when just Morpheus goes, he's starting to believe. And unfortunately, the Oracle scene, I think so many people just kind of tune out and go, okay, he's not the one, whatever. They don't realize the importance of that whole bit where she mentions you have to know thyself. You have to believe in what you hope to be in order to become what you are supposed to be.
Yeah, like they treat the Oracle as the answer, where really she's just the one asking the questions. Or she's the one, like, the answer is within the character that she is speaking to. She's just asking and pointing out the right questions to be asked. That's all the Oracle is supposed to be in this movie. But yeah, a lot of people seem to look at the Oracle as this she is supposed to be an all-knowing being, but she is not meant to just give the answers out. She's supposed to help you find the answer yourself. And I think a lot of people, when they get hung up on that scene and that aspect of the film series as it goes on, get confused as to, well, wait a minute, if he's not the one, how is he able to do all this? Like, well, you just misunderstood exactly what was happening. So I think that scene actually, I was surprised how well done that was, that scene. So I want to point out one thing before we get into our final thoughts. There are certain sequences of the movie where it feels dated. I mentioned the sequence of Trinity jumping off the roof into a window and twirling. That looked really dated. A lot of the special effects when it comes to the machines and the world that is real, that looked pretty dated too. I would not be opposed for this movie being remastered. If someone were like, and I think WB would be smart to actually turn around and say, let's hire a special effects company to redo those scenes. And not redo, but remaster them, make them look a lot better, so then a modern audience can actually enjoy that classic movie with our technology that we have right now. I think that actually would be a good idea, because it would still feel kind of retro-futuristic with the way that the cell phones are and that there are payphones in the movie, but you can make the other stuff look a lot better. Another example, when the particles in the mirror get into Neo's hands, that looked really bad too, or looked really dated as well. But they could take those special effects and spruce them up a bit. I really wouldn't mind that.
Oh yeah, I think it would be great to see, but with how Warner Brothers is just sort of doing things in their own weird way, I'm not sure we'll probably see a great remastering of the movie.
Yeah, and the honest truth is, film buffs like me, when they hear me say that, like, what are you talking about? They should never, because they'll mention things like, oh, what about when Steven Spielberg took the guns away in E.T., or when George Lucas put all that extra crap in Star Wars: A New Hope. Yeah, I get that, but I'm not saying to change the scenes entirely. I'm just saying spruce them up. I'm just saying just update the graphics. And I think actually it would be a lot better in the end. And a lot more people would actually watch it now that are much younger that haven't yet. So I think that might not be such a bad idea. You want to get into final thoughts?
Sure.
All right, go ahead. Let it rip.
In my mind, I would say that The Matrix probably sits at about an 80% for me. It's got great fight choreography. The special effects, while dated, they were revolutionary for their time. And they even sort of kind of give the film the unique feel that it has. But at the same time, you've got the unfortunately wooden performances by both Carrie Moss and Keanu Reeves, with sort of the other characters holding them up and putting some color into the characters, which isn't great. And then, of course, you've got the romance between Neo and Trinity that just feels like it's just something that they're just following through just because of prophecy, not because, you know, they're emotionally invested in each other. But all in all, just I still think it's a fun film. I think it's one that should still be watched, but that's kind of my final thoughts on it.
I'm giving it a rating similar as you. I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 stars. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think the supporting performances are great. I do not really like Keanu Reeves or Carrie Moss in this movie. I've said my piece on what I think of Keanu Reeves' acting, but I know Carrie Moss can actually be a good actor, so that was kind of disappointing. The supporting performances were great. Laurence Fishburne, Hugo Weaving, Joey Pantoliano, they're great in this. The world building, I think, is what really enhances the movie and makes it really enjoyable and want to learn more about the series itself. This wasn't supposed to be a film series, I think. I think they just made the next 2 after it made so much money. It really is an engaging, really well thought out world that I really want to know more about as the film went on. And that hasn't changed in the years that I've seen it as well. Again, I'm going to give 4 out of 5 stars. It still really is a good movie. I'm still more of a fan of The Matrix Reloaded. I know I'm an outlier. I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh, that movie sucked. Like, I actually prefer that one. But I can definitely still see why a lot of people still love this movie. It's very good. I was actually pleasantly surprised. I still liked it as much as I used to. Yep, 4 stars for me, 80% for you, Zero.